On the morning of July 6th, 371 BC, a Spartan army led by King Cleome Brutus marched across the grassy plains of Bucca. In addition to their reputation for military discipline and skill, the Spartans also enjoyed a significant numerical advantage. Cleome Brutus felt comfortable and deployed to a nearby field, ready to face the Theban army. Stephen's army, commanded by General Epaminondas, was much smaller than the Spartans. Moreover, they did not possess the same renowned military prowess, but when he saw the Spartan deployment line, Epaminondas breathed a sigh of relief. His bet on the Spartans' deployment had been correct. Perhaps his bold and risky strategy would pay off abroad. In the 4th century BC, the battle for Greek hegemony raged for decades. In 404 BC, the Peloponnesian War ended with the victory of the Peloponnesian League. Sparta's dominance of Greece became a reality, and the ancient Greek world was reshaped. Athens suffered under Sparta's new dominance, and Lysander sought to expand its influence. The first decade of this century was marked by Sparta's brutal dominance. Sparta's aggressive behavior toward other city-states led to a marked revolt among them. Sparta possessed the most powerful army Greece had ever seen. However, the other states did not enthusiastically embrace the disciplined and calm Spartan culture after the collapse of Sparta and its former ally. The Persian Empire declined and control shifted to Asia Minor. The other city-states saw an opportunity to consolidate their positions. Invaders were Sparta's most prominent adversaries. The Corinthian War broke out in Athens in 395 BC, and the Peloponnesian League and Sparta fought against the other city-states who received crucial support from the empire. Lysander was killed by a Theban horse at the Battle of Sidria in 394 BC, and the Persian fleet destroyed. Sparta's fleet. Meanwhile, Persian agents roamed the Greek countryside to mobilize the population against Portland and Germania at the Battle of Lycurus in 390, where Athenian infantry defeated Spartan hoplites. Sparta's power was waning despite its significant presence. Persia recognized Athens as an equal part of the Persian Empire. However, Sparta was allowed to reassert its control over other territories. It imposed heavy taxes, conscripted soldiers, and recruited mercenaries. Brutal abuses against rebel city-states followed. Resentment grew among these communities under Spartan rule, and many hoped that an external force would shift the balance of power. This force came in the form of actions. In 383 BC, Sparta seized control of Athens, prompting the city-state's most prominent democratic politicians to conspire to liberate it. Sparta lost its power just 4 years later. Angry looters overthrew and killed a professional athlete. After the contagion spread, Theban exiles marched into the city to liberate it. After Athens installed a democratic government that was strongly hostile to Sparta, it established the Second Athenian League, whose primary goal was to defend the region against Spartan aggression. After the Spartans learned of the rebellion, Clinkel and his brothers gathered an army and marched north. However, the Spartans were unable to establish control. As winter approached, the king left a garrison in the village of Thisbe. The Spartan navy sailed to regain control, but the Athenian fleet halted them at the Battle of Naxos. On the way, they destroyed the Spartan fleet during the winter. Photria, the commander of the Thespian garrison, plundered several villages without receiving official orders. When things got bad for the Spartans, he was arrested and tried. His acquittal angered Athens and prompted it to join the anti-Spartan alliance. Cleome later wrote, "He failed to win the demons back to their side." The other king, Gisellus II, launched 2 campaigns against the plunderers. These campaigns also yielded no satisfactory results. Eventually, the plunderers and the Athenian alliance drove the Spartans from central Greece altogether, asserting their control over the Bosporus. The plunderers pledged allegiance to a revived Oceanian League, an alliance of sovereign states in which they were clearly the dominant power. They began to intimidate and even destroy city-states that refused to join them. The plunderers' behavior alarmed Athens when, after years of war, Sparta, eager to join, proposed a peace conference, which the king of Thebes also joined. But the peace conference yielded no results, and Thebes refused any concessions and eventually withdrew after the peace talks reached a stalemate. The war inevitably continued once Epaminondas left the meeting, and the Spartan king began organizing a lightning campaign to prevent the Thebans from preparing about 8 miles southwest of Thebes, where the two armies met in the summer of 371 BC. Mayprot commanded approximately 10,000 infantry. This was a mixed force, including Spartan hoplites and other Peloponnesian soldiers. Members of the League also filled its ranks. The Lights of Hope were standard armour at the time, a heavy breastplate. The Braves wore heavy shields and long spears. Traditionally, this type of fighting saw two opposing factions form a square 10 to 12 feet deep, advancing against each other. The stronger side would push the other until their ranks were broken. Sparta's military might was based on this concept. The Spartan king commanded between 1,000 and 1,200 soldiers. He used 1,500 cavalry for reconnaissance. Instead of fighting, the Spartans greatly outnumbered the marauders. Their name was derived from their 6,000 to 7,000 infantry and 1,500 cavalry. Unlike the Spartans, the Thebans used cavalry as a fighting force. Having learned in advance of the Spartan advance, Epaminondas built a fortified camp near Leuctra to ensure the Spartans could not advance against them. Knowing that the Spartans outnumbered him and were likely to overwhelm him with overwhelming force, Epaminondas devised a new, unprecedented strategy. He concluded that the Spartans would place their strongest forces on their right flank. He focused on this flank and deployed his army to reflect the Spartan force. The Theban right flank was reduced, and any additional forces were sent to reinforce the left flank. This left flank was approximately 48 lines deep, 4 times deeper than usual. The elite forced the so-called thief. A sacred band of 300 soldiers was the vanguard of the left flank. This sacred band was the elite force, a guard of 150 million amorous couples. The idea behind the sacred band of lovers was that the desire to impress and defend a lover increased each soldier's morale and stamina. The shame of fleeing before a partner was unbelievable. The rest of the Theban army was nothing but a resilient force. The Theban plan was bold, brazen, and risky. If things went wrong, the Spartans would easily crush them. In short, the king's strategy depended on the victory of his left flank. In the previous battle, the weak right flank would have been weakened, as the Spartans had deployed standing soldiers. They breathed a sigh of relief. They spread out, concentrating most of their strength on the right flank. The two sides lined up in an extended line. The Thebans refused, and the flank stood at a distance. The distance between them was about half a mile. Sources conflict as to whether the Spartans were enthusiastic or passive about the battle. What is known is that Epaminondas launched the first attack and led the Thebans. The army charged towards the unprepared Spartan cavalry, and a brief skirmish ensued before the Spartan cavalry withdrew from the field. The Theban commander surveyed the battlefield on horseback and ordered the auxiliary troops to advance in an oblique formation. The left wing, led by the Sacred Legion, advanced, clearing no man's land. Fierce fighting ensued as soldiers on both sides fought for their lives, while the right wing was much slower to advance. Battle cries echoed in the air, or the Theban right wing and the Spartan left wing had not yet clashed. The battle was fought with great courage and enthusiasm, but it was clear that the Thebans were superior. The pressure was intense. Part of the unengaged Spartan wing attempted to encircle the reinforced wing, but they were too strong, and the approaching no-man's land wing posed a significant threat. Finally, the Spartans fought in the heart of Thebes and near the right wing, along the entire line. But as they advanced in the rear, morale plummeted, and cracks appeared in the Spartan army, led by the right wing, forcing the infantry to retreat. The entire Spartan army quickly collapsed and returned to its encampments, overcoming all odds and outnumbering the Thebans. Victory records claim that the Thebans lost a few men, while the Spartans lost around 2,000. Neither side decided to continue the Theban victory. However, the Spartans outnumbered the Thebans, making a pursuit impossible and crushing the Theban victory. Spartan morale plummeted, and a counterattack was also unlikely. After the battle, Sparta and Thebes reopened negotiations, allowing the Spartans to retreat to the Peloponnese. When news of the victory spread throughout Greece, every city-state was shocked. The most militaristic city-state in the region had been defeated by a much smaller and less experienced army. It was a watershed moment that marked a decisive shift in the political distribution of wealth. Thebes shattered Sparta's hegemony. Sparta's importance waned, while Thebes became the most influential city-state. Internal unrest and hostility among the city-states continued, but Ethan, wary of the changing tide, sided with Sparta against the invaders. The ongoing civil war in Greece made Greece vulnerable to foreign invasions, and this is precisely what happened shortly after Nun's son rose to power. Philip II of Macedon invaded Greece, subjugating most of the Greek city-states, consolidating his control and paving the way for his son to conquer not only Greece, but much of the known world. The age of Alexander the Great was approaching, and thanks to Philip, world history would never be the same again. The birth of legends was approaching.